Jesse with dipngoautocolor. Today we're doing a wheel. I'm doing a full walkthrough on the wheel for you guys. I'm going to show you the ins and the outs of dipping a wheel that has a lip. A lot of people have asked me, Jesse, how do you dip a wheel with a lip without getting texture? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. In addition to that, I'm going to show you the differences in each can of Plasti dip that I've received. Now, since the demand of Plasti dip has increased, Plasti dip has switched out their manufacturers. I don't know where they're sending out their manufacturers to, but the cans, the consistency in the cans are spraying differently, and the tips on the cans are affecting that as well. So I'm going to show you which cans spray, how they spray, and which ones I prefer. That way you guys aren't surprised when you start to spray your can of Plasti dip and it's not coming out in the consistency you expect. So before we got started, this is just a standard junk wheel that we have. It's a pretty complicated wheel. Even though it's a standard 5-spoke design, the spokes are split. These are things that you kind of have to pay attention to when you're Plasti dipping, because if you Plasti dip this as the standard 5-spoke, you're not going to cover the inside of the spoke. So to get started, we went ahead and we cleaned the entire wheel. It's an alcohol, degreaser, and water mixture. Now the degreaser is to kind of like degrime the wheel. The alcohol cleans the wheel and gets all the wax and polish. Do not use any kind of polish or wax on the wheels. You want to make sure that the Plasti dip is sticking to the surface, not the wax or the polish. So you want to get all that off. In addition to that, you just want to use a standard microfiber, or towel or whatever, something that's not going to leave lint. Luckily, we have in the shop pre-washed microfiber rags, so we just went ahead and did that. So after we clean the wheel's all set, ready to get sprayed. Now let me go over the different cans of Plasti dip that we have. There's really no way of telling which kind of can you're going to get, even just by looking at them. But we have cans of Plasti dip with the standard Plasti dip tip. These are the cans that everyone's used to seeing, but Plasti dip recently has switched to these types of cans with this tip. Believe it or not, these tips, they spray differently. It's a thicker spray, it's a more bubbly spray, so you want to make sure that when you're spraying, you give a nice distance. These also come out a lot faster, so it's a lot easier to run your Plasti dip when you're spraying this. Also, when you're spraying the Plasti dip cans, if it's this can or whatever can, if it starts to catch on the tip and you're not touching it with your finger, get rid of the can. It's not going to improve and it's not going to fix itself. So just kind of things to think about before you start Plasti dipping. So we're going to start off with just a regular can of Plasti dip. The standard tip. You want to shake it for about a minute. And of course you want to wear a mask. Any kind of protection will do, as far as masks, something to use for spray painting or painting, or any kind of debris in the air. Plasti dip's heavy. So the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to do light coats on the spokes. We're not going to focus on the rim. The lip of the rim is going to be the last thing that we do. So here we go. Okay, so that's our first coat done. I'll be back with you guys after it dries. Once it's dry, we're going to go ahead and do our second coat. It's going to be about the same, so I'm going to skip over that because it's the same process, and I'll hit you guys back on the third coat. Okay, so I've done 2 coats on the wheel, and kind of like what I was talking about before with the Plasti dip cans, you really don't know what you're going to get. This can started to malfunction on me. As I was spraying, I started to get dribbles. You can kind of see them. Now, it's okay for like the first 2 coats. You really don't want that on your final coats because those are noticeable. So we're going to get rid of this can. We're going to give one of these cans a shot. Make sure that when you're spraying, if you're wearing a glove or not wearing a glove, keep your tip of your finger behind the white. Reason being is if it's just over just a little bit, the fan on the Plasti dip is so wide it's going to hit the tip of your finger and it's going to start to spray splatter everywhere. So be very careful, be very aware when you're spraying these types of cans. You don't want to mess up a good job. So back to the wheel though. As you can see, I did the spokes of the wheel. When I went to go for the inside of the wheel of the spoke, you want to angle your plasti dip so the line is going into the spoke. You want to keep it wet. The reason why you want to keep it wet is you don't want to make sure that, let me back it up a little bit. You want to go into the wheel. The reason for that is you want to make sure any kind of plasti dip dust in there, it's being re-liquefied. That's the key to not having any texture. So when you're spraying inside the spokes, the first 2 coats we didn't get in there. So this coat we want to get in there, make sure it's wet. When it's wet, it's going to re-liquefy that plasti dip. So all that dust or all that texture that you're seeing, it's going to go away. You don't want to go too much because you don't want the plasti dip to run. You don't want to get texture, but this is how you avoid texture. So it's kind of like an in-between. It takes a while to get the hang of it, but once you get the hang of it, you guys are going to be plasti dipping like crazy. You're going to get that nice texture-free wheel that you've been looking for. So what we're going to do is we're just going to shake this can up. We're not going to do the lip of the wheel yet. We're a couple coats away from that. So right now we're focusing on the inner wheel only. We're going to do the outsides of the wheel. We're going to do the insides of this. We want to make sure we get the spokes as well. So I'm going to put my mask on, and I'm going to plasti it. So we're just going to get up close to show you the wheel. 3 coats in. There's no texture on the wheel. It's still just a little wet. We did lay it on pretty thick inside those rims. Here's one of those chunks I was talking about. Now we can thin that out and fix it. But I just want you guys to see what we're dealing with. Wheel looks pretty good. We got some overspray here on the lip. That's okay. When we go over the lip for real, it's going to go over the entire wheel, and it's going to be fun. So we're about 2 more coats out, and then we're going to get started on this lip. So I'm going to do the next 2 coats, and I'll be back when I'm done. So this is dry. Now we're ready to start doing the lip. We've done 4 coats on the spokes. We're going to do the next 3 to 4 coats on the lip, and then for the final coat, we're going to go over the entire wheel. And before I get started, also, there is plasti dip dust on the lip, so you want to lay it down a little bit thicker than you normally would on a very first coat. You want to lay it down as if you're doing a 3rd coat. Also, before I forget, when you're spraying your dip, you want to make sure you're angling away from the center of the spoke. So when you're laying it on, you want to make sure you're angled just back a little bit. And then when you're going around the lip of the wheel, you want to make sure you're angled down. So that way that overspray isn't getting on the lip of the wheel. I'm sorry. So it's not getting on the spokes, it's only getting on the lip. So we're going to let that dry. We'll be back. Alright guys, back of the wheel again. So 3 coats on the lip, 4 coats on the spokes. We're going to go over it one more time completely. I'm going to start on the lip, I'm going to do the spokes, and I'm going to do the outside of the wheel. And that's going to finish up the wheel. Once I'm done, I'll get a close-up of it so you can see what it is. So you can see what it looks like, not what it is. I already know what it is.
You need your butt. Either that or try to do some body work to it.
Alright, that does it. You could see that at some points when I was spraying, I was actually getting that ball up I was talking about. So you might see a couple specks on there. If this was for a customer, I would clean it up, I'd go over it again. But since it's just a wheel tutorial and I was explaining how I do things, we're just going to leave it. So once it's dry, I'll get a close-up. Here's the wheel finished. No texture on the lip, no texture inside the spokes. It's completely smooth. It's the finish we were looking for. So just remember, do it in stages if you have a lip. Do this center portion first. Do the insides of the spokes. Make sure it's nice and wet when you're spraying. Do about 4 coats here. And then on your 5th coat, start doing the lip. And then from about coat 5 to 7 or 5 to 8, you're only going to focus on the lip. Make sure your spray is away from the center of the wheel. And then for about the 9th or the 10th coat, just to finish it off, give it a uniform look, go over the entire wheel one more time. Thanks for watching, guys. The Scion TC is going to get dipped, so stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe.